Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Plugin Spotlight. Today I'm going to be covering Digitalis by Aberrant DSP. I picked this plugin up a couple of months ago and I've slowly been wrapping my head around it. There's a ton going on here, so I'm going to get right into it. Digitalis is described as a digital wasteland and is made up of a bunch of modules. There's a spectral filter, a pitch shifter / quantizer, a few different types of digital degradation, a glitch section, a master high pass and low pass filter, and a sequencer that can modulate many of the different modules' parameters. Digitalis shines as a distortion effect, but that's only scratching the surface. Digitalis' interface is incredibly unique and has an awesome retro Mac feel. Before I get into the main controls, I want to cover the options menu. Wallpapers allows you to set the background of the plugin. Help Center allows you to enable or disable the John animations, as well as toggle text-only mode. This is helpful if you're experiencing CPU overload problems. The final submenu is for configuring the grid controls for the Paint module. UI size allows you to set the size of the plugin. The final menu is the presets menu. There are a bunch of different types here and are a great way to get instant results. The modules are broken up into 3 categories: data, corruption, and time. These can be dragged and dropped to rearrange their location, and each of the 3 windows has a mix control in the top left corner. I'm going to start with data. Data has 3 sub-modules. The first one is Paint, which is a spectral filter. There are a bunch of presets ranging from simple dots to the Mona Lisa. Directly underneath the presets are the clear and fill buttons. Clear will clear whatever you've drawn on the canvas, and fill will fill the canvas. The pencil tool will allow you to draw on the canvas, and the eraser will erase what you draw or allow you to carve out sections if you use the fill tool. Underneath that, we have a line width control for the pen and eraser tools, as well as the speed and sync controls. By default, the scan rate isn't tied into the session BPM. The rate slider allows you to change the speed of the scanner. If you enable sync, the rate will instead be determined in beat divisions. The final control is the intensity slider, which is basically a dry-wet control for the filter. I think the best way to demo this is by using the fill option. You'll notice that the audio stops playing. The entire frequency spectrum is currently being filtered. If I select the eraser tool, this will allow me to open up certain bands. The next sub-module is Pitch. Pitch is both a pitch shifter and a basic auto-tune effect. Shift sets the pitch change in semitones and has a range of 2 octaves up or down. Formant allows you to shift the formant to further refine the pitch shifted signal. The quantize slider will enable pitch shifts that match a scale and give a subtle or extreme auto-tune type effect. Mix controls the dry-wet level of the effect. The final element is the scale selector. By default, the root note is set to C and the scale is set to major. You can set the root note with the keyboard and choose from one of the 4 scales by clicking on major. The last sub-module is Telecommunications. This effect simulates the sound of a bad MP3 using spectral glitching. Loss introduces a packet loss effect. The higher the amount, the more dropouts will occur. Priority controls the amount of high-frequency loss. At higher levels, there will be less high-frequency dropouts. Mix is once again a dry-wet mix. Signal strength determines the size of the frequency packets that are lost. The lower the signal strength, the larger the packet size will be. You can see the loss reflected in real time in the window above the controls. The next set of effects are in the corruption window. The first submodule is Decimate. This uses a sample and hold algorithm to degrade the audio quality. The amount knob sets the amount of quality loss. Crossover controls the frequency range that the effect will be applied to. By default, this is off, but if you enable it, the effect will only be applied to the selected frequency and below. Smooth will roll off any high frequency distortion. This effect has its own mix amount control, which allows this to be subtly integrated. Next up, we have the Bitcrush section. Like Decimate, this also has a dedicated dry wet control. This is a pretty advanced bit crusher. The top slider sets the bit depth ranging from 24 to 1. A word of caution, this can get very loud as you get to lower numbers. The next slider is the futility slider. This determines the likelihood of signal dropout. Crossover behaves the same way as the crossover control in the Decimate section. Mode lets you swap between lin, which I'm assuming is linear, and mu, which I'm guessing is some sort of multiplicative function. This isn't really explained anywhere, but to my ears, the mu mode sounds smoother. Gain compensation will compress the level of the bit-crushed audio to rein in the extreme levels that can be outputted at lower bit depths. The next section is for dynamic bit crushing. This enables you to reduce the bit depth of audio that comes in over a certain threshold. There are pretty standard compressor controls here with threshold, ratio, attack, and release sliders. The final submodule is Bitrot. This simulates the sound of an old CD. The amount knob controls the intensity of the effect. Width sets the stereo spread of the rot. Tone controls the frequency range of the rot, with values to the left being warmer and values to the right being brighter. The dropouts knob will introduce random audio dropouts. I'm not 100% sure what the MS toggle does, but to me it sounds like a mono stereo switch. Finally, the entire corruption section has its own 6 dB per octave or 12 dB per octave low-pass filter. The last effect window is time. This is a complex beat repeater that can be extensively tweaked. The start and stop buttons activate or deactivate the effect. There's no way to sync this to the DAW transport, but you can get around this with automation. The rhythm section sets the frequency that the rates will occur. This can range from once per bar to once every 4,096 notes. When you start getting into higher values, you can get some really interesting sounding results. The next control sets the duration of the repeats. On the right, you can set the note type of the rhythm, either regular, dotted, or triplets. Underneath is the tempo control. If you have sync enabled, this will be matched to the global BPM of your session, but you can unlink it and set it anywhere from 60 to 240 beats per minute. The smooth slider will introduce a fade for the repeated signal. This can cut down on clicks and pops. The pitch bend section is interesting. By default, the start and end pitches are linked, but this can be toggled off by unlocking the lock in the middle. This will pitch shift the repeats. The pitch can be shifted one octave up or down. If you set the start pitch to a different value than the end pitch, then the pitch will bend from the starting value to the end value. The last section is the glitch section. There are two identical sets of controls here, one for rhythmic changes and one for pitch changes. These controls will introduce random variations. Depth sets the maximum value that the fluctuations will be. For example, in the rhythm section, the higher the depth value, the faster the maximum repeat rate will be. Intensity controls the probability that randomization will occur. The rhythmic toggle allows you to swap between rhythmic and chaotic. Rhythmic will be in time with the plugin's tempo, whereas chaotic will be truly random. Once again, we have the MS control, which we saw in the Bitrot section. And I'm assuming these toggle between mono and stereo as well. Before moving on to the sequencer section, there are a few master controls. There are in and out gain sliders, a global mix knob, and a global low pass and high pass filter. The final element of Digitalis is the sequencer. You can control up to 4 parameters with the different lanes. Starting from the left, you can set the rate ranging from whole note to 32nd note, as well as change the type between regular, dotted, or triplet. You can also set an independent BPM for the sequencer or have it synced to your DAW's clock. To select a parameter to control, click on one of the drop-down menus and pick one of the targets. Now the 16 knobs will adjust that parameter. The slider at the bottom is used for setting the sequence length. If you're having trouble getting a specific value for one of the knobs, you can hold control to get finer resolution. The last element of the sequencer is the smoothness % control found in the top right corner. This will introduce a fade at the beginning of each step. That's going to do it for today. Like I said in the intro, I've been really loving this one, and it's replaced a few different plugins for me. I use it for bit reduction, spectral filtering, and while sort of specific, the MP3 style quality reduction section is really fun. As always, thank you for watching, and if you have any plugins you'd like to see me cover in a future episode, leave a comment below. I'll see you next time.